In this video, who are we going to pick on today? Let's talk about heat pumps. Yes, the new car crash that's waiting to happen throughout the country. Something that I believe is once again taking the British public for a ride. But how and why? Let's look into it. So, the government's pushing everyone to rip out their gas boiler and install a heat pump. This horrid, big, ugly, noisy contraption that sits outside your house, disturbing your neighbours just so that you can keep warm. There are 15,000 installers at the moment, and to meet the quota that the government has in mind, lots more will have to be trained. These normally are not plumbers, they're people who have just been trained to install heat pumps. They'll come into your home, rip out your gas boiler, rip out your piping, install everything that they need for the heat pump, larger radiators because the ones that you have will be inadequate. The ones that they will install will probably be inadequate, but they won't tell you that because all they want to do is to get you to sign on the dotted line and pay once again. Now, the common argument we hear is that heat pumps have a COP of 3 or 4 to 1. That means that for 1 kilowatt of electricity, they will generate 3 or 4 kilowatts of heat. Now, I don't know who actually did these tests. Perhaps it was VW, because in this instance, once again, somebody's been cooking the books. Because guess what? Those tests were done at 20 degrees. Who needs their heating on at 20 degrees? When the temperature starts to drop, like it is today, below zero, that COP, that amount of heat produced from the heat pump, which is trying to get heat out of air that's below zero, drops down dramatically, seriously, in no time. Meaning that the figures that they present to you are a lie. So let's look at it in more detail. A modern gas boiler is accepted to have an efficiency of over 90%. Let's take 90%. That means that for 1 kilowatt of gas, a modern gas boiler will generate 0.9 kilowatts of heat. Now, if a heat pump with that 1 kilowatt generates 3 kilowatts of heat, or possibly more, it will do so on a warm day when you wouldn't even have the heating on. You probably have your windows open anyway, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt because we don't want to condemn VW again, do we, for no reason whatsoever. But take into consideration that 1 kilowatt of gas at the moment is just over 7p. 1 kilowatt of electricity is 28p. So a heat pump would have to generate over 4 to 1 just to match a gas boiler, not to beat it. But there's something else. The heat pump will not heat your water to the temperature that a gas boiler will. At best it will be lukewarm. That is actually topped up by an immersion heater, technology that went out in the 70s when the homes in this country started to have central heatings. So in half, in some way, we're going back to technology that's 50 years old. Then there's the other issue in that the heat, even from your radiators, the emitters, is not hot enough. So you not only have to spend, even if you take the £4,000 grant from the government, I believe it's 4,000, and you pay out another 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is out of your pocket to have this contraption installed into your home won't be warm enough because the radiators are at best lukewarm. That is why they advise that you need to upgrade your insulation to the degree that if you were to insulate your house to the specifications that are required, you wouldn't need a heat pump anyway, because you'd be able to keep your house warm with a couple of candles. Let's let that go for the moment. Now, for those of you who've been on holiday abroad, Spain, Greece, Cyprus, Dubai, wherever, what happens when you turn the air conditioning on? You hear this contraption outside going away, whirring away. You may not be so aware of it if you've only gone on holiday and you don't really take much notice of it, but think of a quiet residential close in the UK. You have this heat pump outside your back door, and literally just there is your neighbour's bedroom window. And if you're a bit of a night owl and your pump kicks in at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, your neighbour's not going to be pleased. Already there are people complaining. But one further thing that they don't tell you, and I know this from experience from abroad with my own air conditioning system, which is not that old, anything with a fan gets noisier every single day from the day it's installed. It gets noisier, not quieter, and within 2 or 3 or 4 years of it being installed, it literally churns out an awful racket. Now, I've seen the deterioration in my aircon over in Cyprus, and it's just used occasionally. It's not going to be used several hours a day, 9 months of the year, like a heat pump would be used over here. So I dread to think what racket they would make in no time at all, and that will cause problems. I'll post a video in the comments from an actual installer who does give a real honest appraisal of what's happening with these heat pumps and the problems that people are having. He had one client who had such problems with noise that he asked him to move it to the bottom of his garden under the trees. So he did, and double insulated all the pipes, but then it went from lukewarm to just about cold. It was doing nothing whatsoever. This is going to be a serious problem. So the other selling point that people are being encouraged to install these is emissions, because anything that cuts emissions has got to be good, right? Because we're all obviously fans of Greta Thunberg, aren't we? But only 40% of the electricity is generated from renewable sources. And if you take into account the electricity that it uses and how clean modern gas boilers are, the argument is not really an argument. Then take into account on an international scale that our country produces less than 1% of the world's pollution, probably one of the cleanest nations in the world, and yet we pander to China, who just in the last 8 years have churned out more emissions than the UK has since the start of the Industrial Revolution. Let that sink in. I assure you that within a decade, just as happened with diesel cars and many other things, expect to start receiving emails and text messages from the blood-sucking solicitors. Have you been missold a heat pump? We will claim on your behalf and we'll take a cut, because that's what solicitors do. They descend on the victims like vultures to take their cut for 30 pieces of silver. I do think that this is a car crash waiting to happen. I think it is immoral. I do feel that we are going to be railroaded into this, because in order to make it more attractive to switch to heat pumps, I believe the price of gas won't come down again. I believe gas will go upwards, and they'll push the price of gas up and up, using one excuse after another, so that it actually does become cheaper to have a heat pump. At the moment, and for the foreseeable future, regardless of what anybody tells you, it will cost you more to keep the average home comfortably warm with a heat pump than it would do with an efficient gas boiler. If we start to go into the argument of, well, if you insulate your home to the degree that it would be warm with a heat pump, your gas boiler would probably only need to come on for 20 minutes a day. So I think that blows that argument out of the water. My apologies to those of you who install heat pumps. You can join all the people who are kicking off at me about my video about the spray foam insulation. It won't stop me, because what I disagree with, I disagree with. I believe that the public have a right to know. I would not advise clients to install heat pumps. I'm actually doing myself a disservice, because I've been approached by many companies offering great incentives if I were to recommend their products. So it's not about that. It's about right and wrong. I'll leave you to decide. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.